Hey everyone, it's Mr. Pearson, and what we're going to discuss right now is the civilization of Mali. The Empire of Mali, it existed about 800 years ago, and if you take a look on the map, you can see right here in this green area where the empire, it says Empire of Mali, it was located on the western region of Africa. Africa is a giant continent, and we find it on the western side near the Atlantic Ocean. That's where you're going to find Mali. But it was located on the western region of the continent of Africa. And Mali was one of the largest and wealthiest empires in that region. It was also one of the most important centers of trade in the world. And the reason for that is that Mali was located across the trade routes. Trade routes were paths traveled by people with goods, things that they wanted to buy or sell. And it was located on the trade routes between the salt mines in the Sahara Desert and the gold mines in West Africa, two very important resources. Now, salt came from mines in the Sahara Desert. And if you look over here, you can see a picture of slabs of salt that were taken out of the salt mines. And salt was a very important natural resource. The people used it for both health and for keeping their food from spoiling. They would put salt on it and it would keep the food from going bad so they could eat it later on. Salt was so valuable in this region that it was sometimes used for money, and it was worth more than gold. Now, there were also a number of gold mines in West Africa. If you look at this picture right here, down here on the bottom, you can see what bars of gold look like. And gold was mined or dug out of the ground. They would dig these deep holes and go in and look for large veins of gold to pull out. It was very rare and it was very valuable because it was difficult to get to. And salt and gold made the Empire of Mali very rich. It was also a safe place to do business, so merchants came from long distances to buy and sell their items for gold and salt. Everyone around the world wants gold, and salt was important for health and for keeping their food good, so that's why they were able to use it like that. Now, what were some of the physical characteristics of Mali? What was the land like? Well, first you need to know that the Empire of Mali was located along the Niger River. Sorry, make sure I pronounce it right. Niger River. If you look here, this blue line, it runs in the western part of Africa. That's the Niger River. The land was mostly desert because they were in the Sahara Desert, but there was some land for farming along the riverbank. This soil along the river, it was nice and fertile, so they were able to grow some things there. There were salt mines in the Sahara Desert. We already talked about that. And there were gold mines in West Africa where they would mine the gold. Human characteristics. What did the people do? Well, the people of Mali had many different jobs. Some of the people worked as farmers. They would grow food along the riverbank. Remember, they were along the Niger River. Some of the people were miners, and we know that they either worked in the salt mines or the gold mines because both salt and gold were very valuable. They were important natural resources. And some of the people were traders. What that meant is they would take the salt and they traded the salt for gold and other products, and they would use the gold to then buy things that they didn't make themselves. And sometimes they traveled in caravans to other areas to trade for these things. And some of the people were griots. Griots, we're going to talk about them in a minute, but griots, they kept and told the history of the Empire of Mali. Now, how did people adapt to their environment? Well, they did it in different ways. The climate of Mali, because it's mostly desert, is very hot. So the people who live there, they sweat a lot. Think about what it's like when you get hot. You sweat, right? Well, they used the salt that they would get from the mines in the Sahara Desert to keep them alive. The salt helps the people keep water in their bodies. And the people of Mali, they also traded slabs of gold for salt, and this made Mali very rich. In fact, there's a story about one of the kings who had so much gold, and he passed it out to the poor people that he saw, that gold became worth almost nothing because there was so much gold to go around. That's how much gold was in Mali. And because there was not a lot of stone or wood found in Mali, there weren't a lot of trees because it's the desert, the people built buildings and houses out of mud. And the crazy thing is, some of those buildings are still standing today. Okay, I told you that some of the people in Mali were griots. Griots were storytellers of the past. Many parts of Africa have an important tradition of oral storytelling. They don't write down their history. They have people who rehearse it and memorize it and then come out and tell that story. There are people called griots who carried all of the history and traditions in their heads. And because of that, they were very important people. They passed these stories and traditions from one generation to the next. So one griot would help to train the next griot so that he would remember, so that the history wouldn't get lost. The griots were very important people. They helped the kings and queens make important decisions about how to rule the land because they knew all of the history. And in fact, there are griots in Africa today, and they help to continue the tradition of telling the story of Mali's important kings. Now, speaking of those kings, let's talk about the great kings of Mali. There are two that we need to know. The first great king was named Sundiata, and he is very much, the people of Mali think of him just like people in the United States think of George Washington. He was basically the father of their country. In the year 1230, a long time ago, he helped to defeat an evil king and set his people free. And this brought peace to the nation. Another great king is a guy named Mansa Musa, a king named Mansa Musa. And he was a distant relative of Sundiata, and Mansa Musa became the king in 1307. And one of the things that Mansa Musa did that was great for Mali was he built a city called Timbuktu. And Timbuktu is located along the Niger River. And Timbuktu was one of the richest cities in the world. The city was home to 2 universities and a great library filled with books from around the world. Timbuktu, like I told you, was a great city built on the Niger River. If you take a look here at this picture, you can see all of the different buildings and the different homes and temples and mosques that they had in Timbuktu. And there were 2 universities and over 170 schools in the city. Learning was very important to the people that lived in Timbuktu. And Timbuktu had a great library. People came from all over the world to study at this library because the library held books that had the wisdom of the world, including translations of Greek and Roman books. Well, that's the information you need to know about the Empire of Mali. And feel free to flip back and forth throughout this video in order to touch on the areas that you may not be totally firmed up on. And if you have any questions, don't forget to ask your teacher or even shoot me an email if you can find my email address. I'd be happy to answer them for you. All right, again, this was Mr. Pearson talking about the Empire of Mali. We'll see you next time.